All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been starting to go through the PowerPoint presentations for Murock's Android Programming 2nd edition by Joel Murock for the AWD1112 Java programming class. In the last video, I went over Chapter 1, where we went through an overview of Android, and we saw quickly an introduction to Android Studio. In this chapter, Chapter 2, we're going to build this tip calculator, all right? And we will learn how to create a new project, how to develop the user interface. As you can see there, we'll look at how to work with a layout, how to add widgets, or what we would typically refer to as controls, to a layout, how to display text. How to set the display text, how to work with resource files, how to set properties, what some of the common properties are, and the XML for the user interface. So again, in the last chapter, we started to go through this, and in this chapter, Chapter 2, which starts on page 28, we'll be shown how to use Android Studio to start a new project, and how to use Android Studio to develop the user interface. All right, so as mentioned in the book, this is what our user interface is going to look like. All right, but first, again, how to start your first Android app. I'm going to bop back and forth between this and Android Studio for most of this lecture. It may very well end up going over and becoming 2 lectures. All right. Our applied objectives: use Android Studio to create a new project for an app. Given a user interface that uses widgets described in the chapter, use Android Studio to develop the layout for the user interface. Our knowledge objectives: list and describe the 3 types of widgets presented in this chapter. Describe why the display text for a user interface is typically stored in a separate file. You'll see the strings.xml file in just a minute, rather than being stored directly in our layout file. Describe how the strings.xml file displays text for an app. List and describe 3 common widget properties. List the 2 most common units of measurement for Android widgets and describe 1 typical use of each unit of measurement. Finally, describe how XML, which is the extensible markup language, defines the layout of the user interface for an app. So again, this is the app that we are going to create. I want to mention a couple things. When we run the app, this is the keyboard that will come up. All right, we will specify that we want numbers only, and that's why you don't see any letters in this keyboard. But this keyboard that comes up is literally referred to as a soft keyboard, meaning that it will come up on the screen as part of our app, as opposed to the hard keyboard, which is the one you physically have connected to your computer. Now you'll notice when you look in here, we have 3 different kinds of what are referred to as widgets. All right, down here, these 2 things, these are called text views. And text views are typically, we would refer to a text view as a label. So we've got text views here, we've got text views here. The difference between these 2 text views and these 4 text views right here, all right, and I guess that's probably another text view right there. The difference between these 4 and these 3 is these 4 will not change. These are just headings. These 3 will change. Every time I click the minus button, that number will go down. Every time I click the plus button, that number will go up. After I've set my percent and after I've set my bill amount and I click the check mark, then these will both change. So text views are like labels. This up here is called an edit text widget. So text view widget, 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 text view widget. 7 of those. 1 edit text widget, which we've typically referred to as like a text box, and 2 button widgets. All right. There shouldn't be anything there that is that surprising other than the fact that rather than calling them labels, we're going to be calling them text view widgets. Rather than calling them text boxes, we're going to be calling them edit text widgets. And buttons are button widgets. Okay, like I said, really nothing new there. So next is how to start a new project. Well, guess what? We've already got that up here. So we're just going to follow the steps. These steps are shown on pages 32 and 33. If Android Studio displays the welcome page when you start, you can create a new project by selecting Start a New Android Studio Project, which is what you see on your screen right now. Otherwise, if it doesn't come up, you can select File, New Project. Either way, you see this dialog box. All right. Now, what we're going to put here for the application name, you should get used to not putting blank spaces in here. I'm going to type in tip calculator right there. For domain name, it's typically going to be your email address, but in reverse format. Since my email address is jpscott@rankin.edu, my domain name will be edu.rankin.jpscott. All right. The package name here, it automatically changes to jpscott.rankin.edu.tipcalculator. So it reverses this and combines that on the end. The project location will be under Android Studio Projects. All right, tip calculator. I don't really like that, so I'm going to change that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come out into my File Explorer, and under my desktop, I'm going to make a new folder here, and I'm going to call that new folder Android Projects. Not the greatest name in the world, but it'll work. All right. And then I'm going to change this. So I'm going to click the three dots. I'm going to go to my C drive. All right. And I've got to go to my users, Rankin. Hopefully I'm JP Scott underneath here someplace. Where is that? Tell you what, I want to make it easier on myself, so I'm going to go to File Explorer again, go to Desktop, go to here, and I got to find out what this path is. So that will be what? Under C:, users, Rankin, desktop, I believe, Android projects. So that should be the path. All right, a little harder than I thought it would be, but so on here, I'm going to change that to this. All right, there I'm under Android projects, tip calculator, which is what I want. So I'm clicking OK. Now everything should be set. I don't think I have to worry about including C++ support, so I'm going to click Next. And it says select the form factors your app will run on. So they're suggesting that the minimum SDK that we use will be Android 4.03 ice cream sandwich. We'll just leave it for the minimums for right now. All right, that's for phone and tablet. And don't worry about the Wear and the TV. We're not going to do anything with that. So I'm going to click Next again. It's building a bunch of stuff for me in the background. Okay, I can click Next again. And it says, what do you want in here? All right. And notice that the default is an empty activity. So on page 32, I started up a new project. I had the dialog box come up. I gave it the name as shown there. All right, I accepted the defaults. Now I'm on step 3 to select a template. They're asking you to select empty template, which is the default, so I'm going to click Next. Now we are supposed to enter a name for the activity. For the tip calculator app, Notice it says main activity by default, but they suggest that you change it to tip calculator activity. Tip calculator activity. All right, so now it's pretty much looking the same way that it does in the figure that's on page 33 that's in the book. This is the name of the file that stores the XML that defines the user interface for the activity. A layout is a container that contains one or more child elements like widgets or controls. All right, when we're done, it says you can click Finish. All right. And it's going through its magic, so to speak. And ideally, what we're going to see now is something that's going to be similar to what you see on page 35 in your textbook in figure 2-3. I'm going to let it do its thing. And when it does come back, rather than starting on the project, I'm going to jump ahead in the slides here because I've already gone through a bunch of that stuff that's in here. So I don't know how long this is going to take. I've done this in the past. I've built several Android apps, but it's been a while. It's been at least a good year plus since I have. But I decided to go at this fairly blind because that's probably what most of you are going to be doing unless you've got some experience building this stuff yourselves in the past. All right, just looking at where I'm standing with a bunch of this stuff here. Okay. All right. So notice it says Building Tip Calculator Gradle Project. We'll talk about Gradle in a later chapter. That really and truly for right now is not important in the main scheme of things. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that. While that's finishing up, all right, I started Android Studio. I did the file. I didn't have to. I just chose Start a New Android Project. I entered the name, which was Tip Calculator. I entered the package, which was edu.rankin.jpscott. I used the default for the minimum SDK. I selected the empty activity template, and I entered the name as was shown. Tip Calculator Activity. So we just went through this. Now, ideally, when we get done in just a moment, this is what it's going to look like. It's still thinking about it, so once we get that, and we get to that point, all right, as we looked at in the last chapter, this is our project area that's going to explain where everything is, that, you know, all our different files, and there's a lot more than are shown here. This is our palette area, which is likened to a toolbox that we had in Visual Studio. This is our work area right here. This is our component tree area right here. This is our properties area. So as we come in and we put in a button, we can set its properties here, for example. And once we come in and add a button, you'll see button in there. All right. It's a little different than what we saw in Visual Studio, but the ideas at least are fairly similar. So we'll look at this default layout. Still thinking about it. Hopefully I'm not going to get a failure message or anything there. All right. And then this is what we're going to do. We're going to come in and start adding some controls to what looks like a little foam there. All right. Now, these controls, again, are referred to as widgets. So there's a plain text view widget, a large text widget, etc. This probably won't make a lot of sense. Probably won't make a lot of sense until you've at least gone through one project. And really, until you've created several projects. All right? And you'll become more and more comfortable with it because whether you realize it or not, you have established a comfort level with what you were working on in Visual Studio. All right? So we're going to do this. Once we come in and we start adding our widgets or controls, you're going to learn right away how you can add a bunch of stuff. Now, I'm getting a message here that says Windows has blocked some of the features of this app. you may get the same thing. I'm going to tell it to allow access. All right. Still going through this. This shouldn't take this long for every project. I believe that and I could be wrong here, but I believe that what it's doing is it's going and it's creating a bunch of new stuff because I didn't have the software, etc. out here before. And bam. Okay, welcome to my screen. If you want to get tips on how to use this, you can keep going, etc. I'm just going to close. Go to File, is Control-Shift-N. Enter file name, I don't want to do that. Project view is Alt-1. All right, it's looking the way I want it to look. All right, so it's getting there. And you'll notice there's starting to build some stuff here for me. See that? So again, this is my project area in here. All right. And the other areas that I have, and I'm going to click View to see if I can bring them into focus. So View and Toolbar. Well, it's all shown there. So let's see. Tool Windows. Like I said, probably should have done a better job than what I've done here, but I'm going into it kind of blind as you are. File, changes, compare. Don't want that. So on page 34, the author says, the first step in developing an Android app is to develop the user interface. The easiest way to do this is to use the graphical layout editor that's provided by Android Studio. This will generate most of the XML for the user interface. Then, if necessary, you can go add more. So it says to open an existing layout, open the project window, expand the resources, which is also known as res, so I don't want this anymore, and of course it will not away. There we go. So expand res right here. Expand the layout directory. And double click on the name of the XML file. All right. Now hopefully it's starting to look a little bit more like what we saw earlier. There's tip calculator. All right. So right now there's nothing in here but a little label that says Hello World. And don't worry about that. That's fine. All right. Now, this is the default layout that Android Studio has generated for us. Android provides several different types of layouts that we'll talk about as we go on. This is a relative layout with a single text view widget that displays Hello World that you see down here. All right. Since a new project typically generates at least one layout file for you, you can usually begin by opening an existing layout, and that's what I did. Now, a little confusing, this is this layout that's in graphical view. If I click on text, this is the same layout, all right, but it's in what's called XML view, and I can bop back and forth between the two of them, and you oftentimes will. So once you've opened a layout, you'll view its appearance in the graphical layout window. All right, and then we're about to go in and start adding some widgets to this, and we'll do this in just a bit. So as we add widgets, if we want to review what we've done, we can go and review the text portion, or we can review it from design view. Now, we didn't get this, but they mentioned on the bottom of page 34 that when you first open a layout, you may get an error message that indicates the graphical editor is having problems rendering the layout. If that happens, all right, there is up here, and I don't remember under which one it is, but there is a refresh option under one of these that you may have to click. We didn't have to. It says it's displayed on the tool in the toolbar above the graphical editor. So it makes it sound as though one of these will refresh. Synchronize. But somewhere in there you'll have to take my word for it. We're going to come and go over all this stuff as we go on in here. If you want to add a new layout, they tell you how to do that on the bottom of the page. I don't care right now. It's all looking the way I want it to look. So we open the existing layout by opening our project window right here. We expanded that. Then we went to our res, which stands for resources directory. We found underneath there the layout folder or directory, and we opened that up, and we double clicked on the associated XML file. All right. So time to go and start to add some widgets to this. So I'm on pages 36 and 37. First thing that I think we can do, I could be wrong here, but I'm not going to worry about it, is I'm going to click on this, I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm going to choose delete. And now I've gotten rid of that particular text view widget that was in there. Okay, it's gone, and if I look under my text, it was here. Okay, I might be able to, can I control Z to bring it back? Yes, I can. There it is again, and when I go to text, all right, where is it? Somewhere in here it has it, and it'll have hello world for it too. There it is. So Android text, and then notice if I go back and again right mouse click on it and choose delete and go back into design into our text view, it's now gone. Now, I don't expect a lot of this stuff that we're going through in here right now to make a boatload of sense. That's to be expected. All right. So this next figure that we have on our PowerPoints is going to show, as it says there, how to add, remove, and align widgets. So to add a widget, you drag it from the palette onto the layout. Sorry, that's the previous video. So if I wanted to come in right now and add a button onto my screen, the easiest way to do it would be to come over to here, find button, and just drag it onto the screen. Now, the text view and the button widgets are in the widgets category. They're in here. The edit widgets are in the text fields category. All right. And again, if you want everything, etc., we'll find this stuff. You'll navigate your way through there, and ideally, at least, it'll make more sense as we go along. All right. So I believe that this, maybe I'm wrong, but I believe this is a good place to stop right here. I'm about halfway through the chapter as we start to talk about how to add our widgets. So I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to create a part 2 video in which I will finish up this chapter, and I'll be back to do that shortly.